Okay, everyone. Today we are talking about emergent curriculum. A lot of us have been discussing lately what curriculum means and what it means to have a plan. And a lot of us can be uncomfortable with the idea of emergent curriculum because it's not always a set premeditated plan. But I am here to assure you that if we set up an environment for children to explore, and if we are all really paying attention to what they're interested in, then curriculum naturally develops and grows. And it is actually a much easier process for a teacher to practice curriculum planning this way. Okay. Each word in the phrase emergent curriculum has an important point to make. Emergent emphasizes that planning needs to emerge from the daily life of the children and adults in the program, particularly the children's own interest. And then curriculum, we all know this word, but curriculum conveys there is also teacher planning in these settings. So there is a curriculum, there is a path or a scope and sequence of instruction and activities that usually follow a projected path, sometimes even a timeline. So it's both spontaneity and planning. And then emergent curriculum, it doesn't mean there isn't a need to plan. It's carefully observing, then creating a plan to go with those interests. Emergent curriculum is child focused, child centered. It's not teacher focused, teacher driven, or teacher centered at all. Emergent curriculum doesn't mean that you don't need to plan ahead. In fact, there is a lot of planning. It's a very fluid and active process, and it may change hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly, which is why I emphasize the fluid part. Okay, so I provided you with a few textbook definitions of what emergent curriculum is. The first one is emergent curriculum is a method of planning and curriculum decision making used readily across the sector. It describes curriculum that is responsive to children's interests and is meaningful, relevant, and engaging for each child. The next one from our beloved and coveted NAEYC. Curriculum, emergent curriculum is curriculum that shifts and shapes to meet children's needs and interests, emerging as teachers and children interact with activities and lessons. Okay, so what is emergent curriculum? Emergent curriculum is a planning process that takes place among both the children and the teachers. So it's incredibly collaborative. To that point of being done in collaboration, it's a process where teachers must share their observations with others and discuss possible plans for the future. Others meaning other co-teachers, directors of the child care center, or the children. Emergent curriculum is not standardized. Standardized curriculum, as we know it, like the kind we're all used to in primary schools, and what we do often see right now in a lot of preschool settings, is designed to focus on outcomes, goals, and objectives that teachers predetermine. And sometimes it's not even the teachers that determine it. It's some sort of director, facility owner, or sometimes preschools are run by corporations that have top-down policies, so we don't know who's setting this curriculum. But in these type of settings, teachers have little or no say on what the children actually want and need. Standardized curriculum eliminates all possibility of spontaneity, inquiry, and true authentic learning. So let's see, a typical example, I know I mentioned standardized curriculum. Sometimes in the field, we call it cookie cutter curriculum. And if you could see me right now, you would see me doing those air quotes to mimic quotation marks. But we see this a lot in preschool settings. And so an example would be when teachers choose to teach about apples every September. In October, there'll be a study of pumpkins and bats and all things Halloween. It's a very sort of Eurocentric cookie cutter curriculum. This is what we tend to see in preschool settings. So emergent curriculum. In early childhood education, curriculum isn't the focus, children are. We need to start separating ourselves from our traditional ideas and our pedagogical practices around the word curriculum. I mean, bottom line, we sort of misunderstand what this means. We think we know what curriculum means. We can get so caught up in the material that we want to teach and all these objectives and goals that we want to reach for the year. But what we do is we end up forgetting that children are truly the focus. In one of our assignments about Ron and Lena's curriculum, I asked you very poignantly, what was the difference in the way the author chose to label each person's curriculum? Ron's curriculum was the name of the teacher, and Lena's curriculum was the name of the child. One was teacher focused, one was child focused. Okay, let's see. Teachers in Emergent Curriculum. The pedagogical intentions of the emergent curriculum approach are often misunderstood and misrepresented, as I have just mentioned before. So I want to, lay out a few things for you, because there is a current myth that planning isn't required or involved in emergent curriculum. But as we discussed in the slide before, planning is very much involved in the emergent curriculum process. And I don't want to scare you, but I do need you to know that oftentimes the emergent curriculum model requires a lot more work. Thoughtful reflection, introspection, discussion with coworkers and peers, discussions with children, planning and more planning. It can be a lot of incredibly hard but rewarding work. So don't think there isn't any planning involved in emergent curriculum. So teachers need to be thoughtfully making plans that draw on children's interests and activities rather than mapping out everything months in advance. Like I said, that's called a cookie cutter curriculum. So again, collaboration, observation, documenting children's work, all of those are key facets of an emergent curriculum approach. Okay, some myths about emergent curriculum. Teachers don't need to plan. Wrong. I just told you there's a lot of planning involved. Teachers aren't very involved. You are incredibly involved. Sometimes you'll sit back and observe, so your eyes are open and your mouth is shut. And then sometimes you're on the floor engaging with the child directly, but you're observing and documenting their interests so that you can later plan with a co-teacher or a peer. And there's another myth that, if children are left to their own devices, they won't learn anything. We have this big fear that children don't know how to direct their own learning. And actually, we know from scientific evidence-based research that children are some of the greatest researchers, the greatest philosophers, the greatest theorists and scientists. They know how to self-direct their own learning. So in emergent curriculum, it's trusting that process for children. Okay, here's a few sources to consider when thinking about emergent curriculum. It's about the children's interests, the teacher's interests, and I will say that there is a lot of buy-in with teachers. It's important that you're not going to be interested in everything a child is, but when you are interested in something, it's more meaningful for you and for them. And children can tell if you are disingenuous. They can tell if a teacher isn't into something. So it's really this beautiful marriage between the children's interests and the teacher's interests. You can source emergent curriculum from developmental tasks like things that children typically accomplish, whether that's physically, socially, emotionally, cognitively. You can source it from things in the physical environment, your outdoor environment, your indoor environment, the people that are in those environments, all the other materials that you might put in a classroom, serendipity, unexpected events that are just meant to happen. Like you might look and go, oh, this child was talking about giraffes and I just went to the zoo the other day. So then maybe you start a conversation about zoos, and then that branches off into a conversation about giraffes. And then we talk about animals in Africa, going on a safari. Maybe somebody's been on a safari. So in our next module, we'll talk about how to take these ideas and actually web them. And what I just did right now verbally was sort of an out loud web of how I would plan this curriculum. Other sources, living together, oftentimes, something super important to understand in childcare environments is we are not working with children, we are living with children. Sometimes we are living with them during the day for 6 to 8 hours. We will see somebody's child more than their parents will on some days. So we are truly living together with children. So things like conflict resolution and caregiving and routines, these are common threads that come up. It can definitely be sources of emergent curriculum or teaching opportunities. And then to that note, values held in the school and community, family, and culture. So if you wanted to plan around a certain cultural tradition of the families in your care or something that's going on within the community, you can source emergent curriculum from anywhere. Okay, I have this on the slide because these are for my face-to-face classes, but in the module I have put a link to the video by Margie Carter called Thinking Big, and I will explain to you during our class meeting for this module what I want you to look for in this video.